Claudius, Shakespeare leads us to believe, murdered Hamlet's father, hastily married his mother, and usurped his throne. In this poem called King Claudius, C.P.Cavafy, one of the two great Greek poets of the 20th century, provides a deadpan, almost lawyerly defense of Claudius. It's a poem that puts you in mind of what George Seferis, the other great 20th century Greek poet, said about Cavafy. He said, Cavafy stands at the boundary where poetry strips herself in order to become prose. King Claudius, performed by Nakul Bhalla.
My mind now moves to distant places. I'm walking the streets of Elsinore, through its squares, and I recall that very sad story of that unfortunate king killed by his nephew because of some fanciful suspicions. In all the homes of the poor, he was mourned. Secretly, they feared Fortinbras. He was a quiet, gentle man, a man who loved peace. His country had suffered much from the wars of his predecessor. He behaved graciously toward everyone, humble and great alike. Never high-handed, he always sought advice in the kingdom's affairs from serious, experienced people. Just why his nephew killed him was never precisely explained. The prince suspected him of murder, and the basis of his suspicion was this. Walking one night along an ancient battlement, he thought he saw a ghost. And he had a conversation with this ghost. What he supposedly heard from the ghost were certain accusations against the king. It must have been a fit of fancy, an optical illusion. The prince was highly strung in the extreme when he was studying at Wittenberg. Many of his fellow students thought him a maniac. A few days later, he went to his mother's room to discuss certain family affairs. And suddenly, while he was talking, he lost his self-control, started shouting, screaming that the ghost was there in front of him, but his mother saw nothing at all. And that same day, for no apparent reason, he killed an old gentleman of the court. Since the prince was due to sail for England in a day or two, the king hustled him off post-haste in order to save him. But the people were so outraged by the monstrous murder that rebels rose up and tried to storm the palace gates, led by the dead man's son, the noble Lord Laertes. A brave young man, also ambitious. In the confusion, some of his friends called out, "Long live King Laertes." Later, once the kingdom had calmed down and the king was lying in his grave, killed by his nephew, the prince, who never went to England but escaped from the ship on his way there, a certain Horatio came forward and tried to exonerate the prince by telling some stories of his own. He said that the voyage to England had been a secret plot, and orders had been given to kill the prince there. But this was never clearly ascertained. And he also spoke of poisoned wine, wine poisoned by the king. It's true that Laertes spoke of this too. But couldn't he have been lying? Couldn't he have been mistaken? And when did he say all this? While dying of his wounds. His mind reeling, his talk seemingly babble. As for the poisoned wine, it was shown later that the poisoning hadn't been done by the king at all. Laertes had done it by himself. Yet Horatio, whenever pressed, would produce even the ghost as a witness. The ghost said this and that, the ghost did this and that. And because of all this, though hearing Horatio out, most people in all conscience pitied the good king, who with all these ghosts and fairy tales was unjustly killed and disposed of. Yet Fortinbras, who profited from it all and gained the throne so easily, gave full attention and great weight to every word Horatio said.